Final Fantasy is perhaps the most well-known JRPG series out there, with 16 mainline titles, numerous sequels, prequels, and side games, and even movies that exist. With such an expansive series, there will always be some discussion on what's good and what's bad, and who would I be if I didn't share my opinion on the internet? Normal. I'd be normal. But I'm not normal, and I care way too much about this series, so we're gonna rank them on a tier list. I've already ranked 10 and 12 in previous videos, so I'm not going to talk about those in this video, but I do have videos for those on the channel that you can check out. Starting off, Final Fantasy I is definitely a game of all time. This is the first game in the series, and it does do a lot to establish its future titles, with a rudimentary class system, its base turn-based combat, and a story centered around crystals and warriors of light. But the keyword here is future titles, because there really isn't much to this game. The story is minimal and told through NPCs that you seldom need to actually interact with, and the classes and their upgrades aren't very unique or interesting and don't really have a lot of flow to them. It's not that bad of a game, but it's not much of a game either, so I'm just going to put this one in C tier and call it a day. Next up is the resident black sheep of the series, and for good reason, Final Fantasy II. It's just nothing like the rest of the games. It's an inspiration for the Saga series, and it ditches level ups entirely in favor of progression systems that increase stats and weapon or magic levels as you use them. There's an overall lack of feedback with this system, and it can be quite jarring. The game's length also means that you don't get to use a lot of your higher level magics unless you really want to sit there and grind for them. The enemy groups are absolutely massive, but they don't really provide any difficulty, and bosses are annoying at best, and some of those fights aren't even actual bosses. They're just groups of stronger enemies from later in the game. Its story is solid for its era, and the keyword system it uses is really unique and interesting, but those positives just don't really save it from being a D tier. And we're all aboard the negativity train for this next one, choo choo, because Final Fantasy III is my least favorite game in this series. God, I hate this game. The first game to introduce a fully customizable class system, Final Fantasy III and its remakes all sport some level of decision-making, overshadowed by the fact that it's going to force you into specific classes more than once during this game. Be it that you're fighting Hein, or that you need to use Dragoons for a different boss, or dungeons where melee attacks just do no damage at all, Final Fantasy III is going to routinely get in the way of your choices. I'll give Final Fantasy III credit where credit is due. Its combat is much better than the last two entries, and the class system does help with that. Unfortunately though, its story is just a rehash of the first game with one or two twists to make it feel unique. It's not got that much going on, and it really lets its good world building down by being such a disappointing story with a very villain of the week feeling to it. Unfortunately, I'm giving this one a D as well. Sorry, not sorry. Stepping off the negativity train for just a little bit, we've got Final Fantasy IV. This game is great. It's got a solid story with convincing real characters, but the only real problem I have with it is that it dangles these characters' deaths in your face back to back over and over again. It's very rare that anyone actually stays dead within the story of Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV is the first game with ATB combat, and it has set classes that define how each character plays. Each of the classes has more variety than they previously did, so it does mean that multiple playthroughs don't get as boring, but there isn't much more going on there. Each character has set abilities that never change, with the exception of Cecil and Rydia, who both change throughout the story. You have all the classic classes like Summoners, Paladins, White Mages, etc, etc. Depending on what version you play though, you'll get to mix and match your endgame party. Most versions will have you stuck with who you've got though. There are a lot of narrative tie-ins in the combat that help the game feel fluid, and cutscenes playing out in battle makes them feel a bit more real. And stuff like Rydia not being able to cast fire until she gets over her fear, or Tella dying when he casts Meteor for the first time because he actually doesn't have enough mana to cast it usually, really help drive the story. It's a fantastic game deserving a fantastic rating of an A rank. Speaking of a great game, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy V. 5 sports an expanded class system and a great crystal story, with another group of Warriors of Light. Despite it being a little bit more of a light-hearted story than previous games, it still finds a lot of time for its broodiness of the classic Final Fantasy. It just kinda washes that away sooner than later. This makes it a different dynamic than a lot of your Final Fantasy parties, where a lot of it is more joking than anything else. The story isn't really the main draw of Final Fantasy V though. The class system here, in my opinion, is one of the best in the series. There are many solutions and lineups for basically every fight in the game. You could do a team of all monks if you wanted, or face down evil with a bunch of white mages, but I really don't recommend that one. If you're interested in getting a good idea of all the different team comps in Final Fantasy V, I recommend you check out 4-Job Fiesta. It's an event run by a bot that will give you 4 different classes that you have to play the entire game through as soon as you acquire them. It's a very fun way to experience the game, and it really shows you all it has to offer. This game is A-tier, easily. Continuing on to our final pixel game in the series, and the 6th entry overall, Final Fantasy VI is where I'm going to really upset a lot of you longtime fans. I don't like this game. I don't know what it is, but I'm not a big fan. I really actually kind of hate Final Fantasy VI. Now, 6 is by no means a bad game. In fact, it's quite a good game. It sports many different characters, all with very unique visual appearances and personalities. Kefka is one of the greatest enemy villains in the entire series history, and it has fantastic world building and a story that goes hand in hand with its progression system. Said progression system, however, is the death of creativity as you resort to spamming Ultima on, well, everything. The gameplay is good, the story is good, and Kefka is an awesome villain, but I just have no excitement for this game, and I'm sorry, I just don't care about it. I don't really know why, but I just find myself bored whenever I play this game. For all the good it does, for some reason it just can't make me interested in Terra's plight, or in Kefka's ambitions, or his godhood. I just don't care at all about these characters. I'm not interested in their lives. Not to mention, the Pixel Remaster removed so many cool mechanics, turning them all into just selectable menu options. I will give this game a B because it doesn't deserve to get dragged through the mud, but it's not going to be the next one I play anytime soon. Moving right along, we have Square Enix's favorite cash cow, the community's favorite game to love or hate, and with no in-between at all, it's Final Fantasy VII. Listen, I don't care what you think, Final Fantasy VII is a good game. Okay, but really though, Final Fantasy VII is a really good game. A lot of people love it for a lot of good reasons. The game certainly looks like something, but it plays buttery smooth, and the materia system is really cool. The downside is that there's a lack of individuality amongst your characters' gameplays when not considering their limit breaks. Each of them does bring a distinct personality and different reactions to a lot of situations, but that's really about it. It has a strong story and one of the more unique settings in the series, with a diesel punk idea. There's nothing really to complain about with it except the graphics themselves. But I'm really not a stickler for those, so I don't really care as long as the game is fun. 7 is regarded as the best for good reason, and while it's not my favorite, it sure is an A-rank game. Ah yes, Final Fantasy VIII. It is no secret that Final Fantasy eventually started to diverge away from its normal ideas to try some new things. Final Fantasy VIII is definitely one of those games. It sports the junction system, which perhaps is one of the most convoluted growth systems in the entire series, and level scaling to keep your enemies in line with you. The gameplay is pretty run-of-the-mill, and each character outside of the limit breaks is basically identical. You can make them slightly different with how you equip them, but overall it doesn't feel like that much of a difference. The story and the world are a little bit more militaristic than usual, with elements of fantasy sprinkled in everywhere you go, like the little magical creatures or the ability to survive in lava-filled caves. That being said, I do enjoy 8 more than I might let on. It's not a terrible game, and it has some really great ideas floating around in all of its ambitious mess. I give it a B solidly, just don't look up the optimal way to play it before you do for your first time. If you were a big fan of Final Fantasy VI's Edgar, then 9's protagonist is going to be your absolute favorite. But seriously, Final Fantasy IX is the last PS1 title in the series, and the only one to return to a more traditional fantasy setting. Each of the characters has a unique role, with some being a little bit less unique. Why would I bring Garnet when Eiko is just the same but better? I don't get why they would do that. Why? It focuses on a story about the suffering of its peoples, and suffering and salvation is the main theme of this game. Final Fantasy IX is often regarded as one of the greatest stories of the series. But the game itself does run abysmally slow, and plays even slower. But if you can look past that, or simply mod it to be faster, then you're in for a treat. Great gameplay that can at times get frustrating is paired with a story that makes me want to crave more of it. So I'm battling with a genuinely good system that runs too slow, and requires me to grind if I want the best equipment and skills, with a reward that is usually worth it in the end, in getting to go through more of this great story. The pacing is frustrating at times, but there's more than enough stellar side quests to fill the gap in the story. There aren't many Final Fantasies that I can say I really like as much as this one, so I am giving it an A, despite the fact that it often gives me grief. Now you might be asking yourself, what do I think about 11? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't. I really don't think about Final Fantasy XI that much. It's an old solved MMO that I'm not really going to play because I never really got to play it in its time. I'm not going to give it any time on this list, so I won't be rating it. I just don't have more time for an MMO. The same is going to be said about 14. I do like 14 a lot, but I'm not going to include it for posterity's sake. That means we're moving on to Final Fantasy 13. I'm skipping over Final Fantasy 10 and 12 because I've already talked about those ones. I will have video links in the description as well as pinned right here in the video, so you can go check those videos out if you would like. If you just want to know what I rated these games, they will be on the list, but I'll mention that I gave Final Fantasy X an A rank and Final Fantasy XII a B rank. Okay, 13 sucks, full stop. I know some people really love this one, and I personally don't think the railroad complaints are that bad, but I do hate this for other reasons. Here you have a genuinely interesting story coupled with the most dysfunctional and frustrating party I've ever seen. Some of them just suck. Others are cool, and they all hate each other for so much of this game. It's like the world's most difficult and irritating group project, just trying to get them to actually work together. 13 splits your party up a bunch, while sporting a system that doesn't really work well with you only having 2 characters, and the gameplay wasn't really all that exciting to begin with. The setting is fine and the story is good, but that's really its only saving grace here. Some people will tell you that the combat is genuinely fun, and at times it can be, but I really just don't enjoy the overall experience offered here, and the characters are super hit or miss. You've got characters like Hope and Snow that spend most of the first half of the game bickering at each other instead of just talking it out. You have Saz, who really doesn't want to be here at all but is a fantastic character, and you have Light, who shuts herself away and just is such a piece of crap. The gameplay can be fun, but it's more cinematic than anything. Most of this game is all about cinematics, and that's just how it is. It's a C-tier game. C-tier, and how dare they give it 2 sequels. 2? Really? This? Again, we are skipping over Final Fantasy XIV. It is a game that I do love, but it just doesn't have a place on this list right now. With only 2 games left, it's time we visit the anime best bros themselves in Final Fantasy XV. It is a game that certainly exists, and I don't really have a lot of problems with it, but it is an interesting entry to the series. Those of you that are familiar with the Final Fantasy XV development cycle may understand that this game went through a lot to get made. It blends a lot of old ideas with a totally new direction for the series. It's very cinematic, and its combat is, quite honestly, very fun. There's a lot to do alongside a serviceable story if you count all of the DLC releases, and it is hard to say that it isn't one of the most content-heavy games in the series. I do say serviceable story, and that's giving it a lot of real benefit here. Most of the plot is just a scavenger hunt for power, with the boys shifting between bickering like schoolchildren and being best friends. I'm personally a big fan, but I can see why some might be turned off by Noctis and his brooding, or Gladio just being mean all of a sudden. As far as actually playing the game goes, it is a very action-heavy game. You have some abilities you can command allies to use, but it's all about swinging your weapons fast and swapping it around. It's fun, though it doesn't feel that unique for an action-y game, but I do still find myself doing a lot of hunts and side quests rather than progressing the story when I play it. So the game does have some faults, and if I had to choose, I wouldn't play Final Fantasy XV as my first choice in the series. But I didn't even own this game until the start of this project, so that kind of shows you that it's not really my favorite to begin with. But it isn't a bad game, especially if you have the DLCs. I'm giving this game B tier because I think it deserves it. The boys are good characters, the gameplay is fun, and the story with the DLC isn't that bad. Well, that's it for the tier list. Let me know what you're thinking. Wait. What is that? Oh, right. I forgot about that one, guys. Give me 5 seconds to play it, and I'll come back with my opinions. And I am back. Final Fantasy XVI is the first real action game in the main series, and while that bothered a lot of people, I don't think it really bothers me anymore. As much as I do love RPGs, a good game is a good game regardless of what genre it is, and 16 is a good game. The combat could be a little more diverse early on, but the icon system is entertaining and really makes it feel fresh. I enjoyed being able to create cool combos and be creative in general, but it does suck that there's no system for rewarding that creativity like in Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. That's just a problem for another video though. Final Fantasy XVI shines its most with a very good story that tugs on your heartstrings, a setting that's more in line with classic Final Fantasy, and characters like Clive, Cid, and Jill who are all fun to be around. The world itself is appropriately cruel and heartless, but with a glimmer of hope hiding in your periphery, which is very much like Final Fantasy at its core. I think the issue I have with combat, namely, is just the lack of a lot of diversity in a lot of situations. There's the absence of reward for your creativity and a near non-existent enemy variety. That kind of hurts it badly, but a masterclass in storytelling really brings me back to liking it. It's at the top of B tier and I really can't wait to finish this game. So that's it. That's my tier list. For real this time. The series got me into JRPGs. It seemed fitting that it be the series that gets me into YouTube. I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.